Steven Universe has always upheld the idea that everyone's place in the universe is unique, unknown, and ever-changing. Nobody is truly evil, and nobody is truly good. The final episode of the original Steven Universe series, titled Change Your Mind, and the Steven Universe movie worked in tandem to promote acceptance of ourselves, the beings around us, and our dynamic reality. I thought I understood this and could learn to accept this too, and then Steven Universe Future came along. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to Cartoon Universe. I'm Chelle. Though I have never made a video about Steven Universe on this channel before, I've always been a huge fan of this series, just like many of you probably are. While this story as a whole definitely had flaws and missteps along the way, it never failed to give heart and power into the validation of people's feelings and emotions. The way this show grabbed us into it was by way of just being a cartoon. It appealed to the nostalgia and humor that the genre itself brings. I think the show lends itself well to affecting all those who watch it extremely differently. For me, some of the main things I'm getting out of it are what is to be explained in this video. But for you, it was probably extremely different. I think that the best way Steven Universe Future can be explained is through the end credit song. It's obvious through this song how the show is going to end, with Steven going and exploring his world and himself away from everyone who loves him. The song says, "I'm dreaming of going somewhere else, being human." Listening to these lyrics make me think of how in Mr. Universe, Steven was upset with Greg for not having a normal childhood. All of the Steven Universe original series was spent with Steven trying to figure out his gem heritage, fighting alongside the gems on Earth, yes, but totally neglecting the human parts of him as he prioritized being a part of the crystal gems rather than doing normal human kid things like go to school and socialize with those kids. Of course, Steven had all of Beach City to love him, but even the audience watching categorized those episodes as filler. They were the unimportant and easy part of Steven's life compared to all the gem stuff going on with him. When Steven Universe Future comes along, all of the gem stuff is resolved for the most part. All of a sudden, the gem stuff is the easy part. Even watching the show, the episodes dealing with Little Homeworld now seem like filler while we wait to figure out what is wrong with Steven. The show ends with Steven deciding how he was going to figure out his life from here. He decides he wants to be human for a while. I think that he realizes that true change, growth, and self-actualization will only come from taking time away from all the things that helped build him up to this point. They have helped him as much as they could and can't do more but support him through his future now. I think it's important to ask now, how did we get here? When Steven Universe Future ended, the answer was easy. The crystal gems were trying to protect themselves and Earth from the corrupt Diamond Authority. Before we move any further, I want to talk about the oxymoron in that phrase. Corrupt Diamond Authority? The diamonds are supposed to be perfect. Corruption is when gems are made to be lost and confused in their minds, body, and soul. Corruption is not an easy thing to heal from. Of course, the word corrupt is used here to denote the fact that their empire was built on purism and genocide, not that they were corrupted in the way the lore in the show works. The Diamonds, especially White Diamond, believed that they were perfect, and they wanted to spread that perfection across the universe. The first moment that perfection was changed forever for her was when White Diamond blushed towards the end of Change Your Mind. Steven himself challenged that gems didn't have to be perfect or what they were designed to be. Pearl, Amethyst, and Garnet spent the entire original series trying to figure that out for themselves. Pearl found herself outside of being a pearl for Rose. Amethyst found that her best qualities came from what were perceived as her defects. And Garnet found herself outside of her relationship as Ruby and Sapphire, but through it again, even stronger. Steven was constantly helping the gems and humans realize their full potential, fixing problems for them every day. But as a child, he could only empathize with everyone. He hadn't developed the tools yet to deal with his own problems and issues of self-worth. He constantly shoved them aside. Amethyst was one of the few loved ones around him that really saw this problem and wanted to fix it. In the original series, this problem was addressed, but it could never be truly solved as Steven was always too busy with all of the other conflicts in his life. Steven becoming a monster and losing control of his shape wasn't new. Rebecca Sugar said in an interview with the Los Angeles Times that the idea of him transforming and losing control of his body is something that we had seeded very, very early on in the show. If you look at episodes like Cat Fingers, So Many Birthdays, or Steven's birthday, you can see how uncontrollable Steven's shape-shifting age and body can be. This problem was constantly explored through episodes like this, but never resolved until now. Looking back at the original Steven Universe series now that Steven Universe Future is over, it's obvious how even though there was a catharsis at the end with Steven himself realizing his true connection to his gem half, there was a lack of satisfaction for his human half. Steven Universe Future found the balance for those two halves in one person. Steven just needed to be human for a while. While Steven constantly accepted flaws within others, in a way he was still chasing that perfection in himself. So it wasn't surprising that he was corrupted since he was trying so hard to be perfect. As a teenager, he pretended that since he saved the day and then saved it again, and had lots of loving family and friends that were doing what they loved and were happy, then he must be happy too. He pretended it was a happily ever after. When he realized he couldn't be happy forever, that there would constantly be changes, he accepted that it would always be hard, but that he got this far so he would continue fighting. And then when there was nothing to fight or nothing for him to contribute to Little Homeworld or Beach City, he didn't know what his purpose could be except for being in love with Connie and being super powerful. When Connie rejected him, he had no other choice to look at his power for being the reason he exists. That is why he had his rematch with Jasper. Even after he shattered her, he tried to pretend that since he fixed it, he could easily fix himself and go back to forcing himself into Little Homeworld to help. But his power was too strong and he wasn't needed there anymore. Perfection is something that could be portrayed in a very literal sense, like we saw in White Diamond, but it also could be in the sense that everything stayed right, good, and happy. Steven was dealing with a lot of what the show was describing as PTSD throughout this series. Steven was forcing his happiness out and everywhere and was constantly encouraged to do that to save the universe. That's what he felt people expected from him. When he realized there was more inside of him, like dark thoughts and an unstable amount of power, he tried to shove that down because not only was he ashamed of it, but he didn't want all of his loved ones to be disappointed in him. Instead of grappling with his mental health head on, he blamed these bad actions on himself. While it's important to be accountable for one's own mistakes, Steven became the monster because he believed he was a monster. This wasn't accountability, this was self-sabotage. I think some people might have thought that this fight was anticlimactic because it seemed like it would almost be some big anime fight with a huge powerful monster, and then it was just everyone hugging Steven. I think that was kind of the point though. Steven always didn't want to fight and always had to find a way around fighting those that were attacking them. Connie said they all needed to help Steven like he helped everyone else, and showing openness to empathy was usually how it began. He needed help to realize he could love himself eventually, that it was possible even if it wasn't going to happen right now, that it was okay to not be perfect. This was Steven's first step of acceptance. His path towards figuring out what life without perfection means could only happen once he left home. If Steven isn't constantly trying to be a perfect, happy kid, he can finally try to figure out what he can do with his life that doesn't involve life-threatening situations for himself or the universe. I think a lot of people, including myself, would have been fine if the end of Steven's story was with Change Your Mind. It made sense. He finally got through to the Diamond Authority, they were able to heal corrupted gems, Earth was safe, and most of the character arcs were wrapped up, including not only the gems, but also some of the residents of Beach City. Steven was even able to finally accept that he was just himself and not also Rose or Pink Diamond. But then the movie challenged the idea of a happily ever after. It introduced the idea that there was always change and conflict, but it introduced this again in the form of a life-threatening conflict for Steven. Now with the Steven Universe future finale, Steven is on his own, away from any extreme gem circumstances. He finally gets that chance to be human and have normal problems. And having those normal problems, having those flaws, having imperfections is the most human and good thing you can do in your life in order to be able to live, change, and grow. I have loved this show for the strength it has given me and for my ability to cherish the love and friendship in my life that I have. The music and the characters are so beautiful, and this little meep morp has been so inspirational for me and so many other artists to be personal and risk-taking in our work. Perfection isn't achievable, and neither is constant happiness, but love and change will always be there for even those who might feel lost and hopeless. Thank you to everyone who worked on Steven Universe for showing that to people of all ages who were taken by your story. And to those of you watching, thanks for tuning in. Keep yourself around a while by subscribing to our channel. Have an animated day.